Homicide thing. This one I'm actually super interested in seeing the whole story. I made quite a few videos on digital homicide games. This is the wackiest fucking company ever.
Down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know Nutty Putty Cave.
Recently, there was a
And the
bundle
guy that
sale
died
on
in it.
Steam called the Digital Homicide Bundle, selling 5 games for $1. It seems like a good deal at first, but all of these games have abysmal user ratings, some dipping below 30% approval.
Oh, he's that guy. I love
One would
that guy.
assume
I didn't know that was his
30%
name.
of people approving the game means that
Yeah,
it still
I know
has
that
some
guy.
value, and that's true, but not in the way that one would assume.
Exposing the
First, we
fake
glance
martial
at the
arts
player
stuff is really
reviews
good.
Reveals that people are giving a thumbs up not because the games are quality, but because these games give Steam trading cards, which can be sold on the marketplace for credit towards other games. This means that, if bought in the bundle, they technically get a return on investment, even if it's only a couple of cents if you don't count the electricity cost of running the computer. There are a few common problems with each game. The gameplay is rudimentary, there is no artistic unity, and even the menus are uniquely painful to use. Assets are recycled ad nauseum, including a cyclops, a rat, a bare-chested harpy, an actual bear, sundry zombies, skeletons, and numerous others. The enemy AI is also basic.
I've played and
speed
speedran a few of these over the years.
Player in an attempt to fuse their model with the target. Any semblance of balance in these games is also absent, meaning they are almost universally easy even when some gameplay elements are breaking.
Which ones?
At first, it's
Let me
easy
see.
to think
I figured it'd be
that
one of the
name
top ones.
pack, Digital Homicide, is a catchy way to bundle multiple
Fuck, I
games
played so
together,
many.
but it actually
I don't remember
refers
which
to the
ones I
single
speedran.
developer of all of these games, Digital Homicide Studios. In fact, the number of games produced by the studio is far greater than 5. According to the official Digital Homicide group page on Steam, there are 18 associated games. Their website, tastefully given the URL digitalhomicide.ninja, offers literally dozens more games under the tab.
Here we go, here's some. I did Gnarltooth, I did Galactic Hitman, I did Dungeons of Crag. Devil's Share is the one that I speedran the most. Yeah, I mean, all their games are beyond fucking horrible.
Referring to Steam
Like,
Greenlight,
even
which allows
as like a
users to
so
vote
bad
on
it's
games
good, they're
they
not
wish
even
to see
close,
on
they're just
Steam's
fucking
store.
awful.
Their website is a strange amalgamation of generic assets, including a deformed-looking fuzzy creature and, oddly enough, a female model in
Actually,
a
give some,
footballer's
Pierre.
outfit holding a football over her groin. The blog seems mostly abandoned, with only 6 posts, all within the month of February of 2016. The first 3 are game development advice for aspiring indie developers, while the last 3 are advertisements for
These are
games
Prime
being
Goon.
released under the Digital Homicide brand. Not long ago, the website looked different, with an advertisement for their game Assholes across
Okay.
the page upon entering, and the words
Don't know that
"Games
one.
made with
Pretty
love"
cool.
just to the left. Digital Homicide has a strange relationship with Steam Greenlight.
Thanks for 2
When
gift
one of
subs,
their
Owen.
games inevitably fails, they simply put it back onto Greenlight, hoping to garner enough votes the 2nd or 3rd or 7th time around, sometimes using dummy publishers to get around quality control. So who is Digital Homicide? The company is comprised of 2 people, a pair of brothers named James and Robert Ramin. Very little is known about them, and only the latter has divulged any information about himself. This raises many questions, but there's one that stands out. How are 2 brothers managing to create dozens of games in the span of only a few years? To understand this, one must be familiar with the concept of asset flipping. All Digital Homicide games are created on the same engine.
Finished Jujutsu
Unity.
Kaisen.
There are plenty of good and even
Fucking
great
great.
games made on the Unity engine, such as Kerbal Space Program, Ori and the Blind Forest, Superhot, and Hearthstone. However,
Hearthstone's
it is
on
notoriously
Unity?
easy to create rudimentary games with it. Many burgeoning game designers have begun using Unity to try their hand at game development, while others use it to create strange and absurdist experiences and release them for free.
I hear story of friend. This friend is Shamrock. He reverses ground magnets with touch.
Just as often, however, it's abused by independent developers to quickly make a terrible game, slap a
Yeah, they
price
said
tag
Harley,
on it,
and
push
it's
it out
all
the door
it
to
all
turn a profit.
helps.
To increase the odds
It's
of
not
someone
one that helps
buying
more
the
than
game
another.
at face value, these developers often will rely on buying pre-made game assets for cheap, something expedited by the prolificacy of assets made specifically for Unity. This practice has grounds in legitimate game development, where indie developers purchase assets such as 3D models
the
to
Prime
save both
protect
time
wild
and
animals.
money, so that other aspects of the game can receive attention. The intention is to build upon these assets and use them as a framework, but sometimes a lazy or cheap developer will buy a myriad of assets and plunk those onto basic coding, then call it complete, a process known as asset flipping. Buying game assets works similarly to buying a font. Rather than purchasing a physical object, the buyer gains unlimited rights to utilize that particular asset, meaning that this process is 100% legal, however shady it may be. By asset flipping, Digital Homicide Studios can churn out games at an unprecedented rate, games that may seem competent on the surface but prove to be vapid and hollow. Despite how egregious this practice is, James and Robert Ramin would have remained an obscure element of Steam's underbelly, were it not for a few bewildering and vitriolic actions against one of the internet's more controversial figures, Jim Sterling, the persona of a game critic named James Stanton. There's a significant subset of content creators on YouTube who enjoy making videos about terrible games, and Jim Sterling is one of them. Among the many topics he covers in gaming, he has a series called Squirty Plays, a gag based on the popular Let's Play videos. In these, he chooses games that, to him, seem obviously squirted onto Steam to make some quick cash on gamers who don't
Haven't heard of that one yet.
and plays them without researching them beforehand as a first impression.
Yeah, we're always up to for repeat guests on the podcast.
On November 1st of 2014, Sterling chose to feature The Slaughtering Grounds, which Digital Homicide had released onto Steam the night prior under the guise of another studio, Imminent Uprising. Predictably, the game was low quality, but Sterling seemed more confused than disgusted during the 10.5-minute long video as he scrambled about through the pre-purchased assets in an attempt to find ammunition for his poorly stocked weapons.
Hello, what's this? Oh, we need a new gun.
Man, I remember this whole thing.
I got nothing.
Enraged by the negative reception, James and Robert took to YouTube themselves in an attempt to strike back at this slight. They uploaded Jim Sterling's video onto their own channel as part of what they claimed was a new series entitled Reviewing the Reviewer.
Yeah, fuck yeah, classic.
Criticizing Jim Sterling and the video. The first slide of text reads, and I quote, "Hello, this is Jim Sterling and I am a fucking idiot. Don't believe me? Well, just watch this piece of shit review I've made." The text continues to lambast Jim Sterling throughout the rest of the video, liberally insulting his intelligence and the quality of his content, calling it useless shit and other vulgar pejoratives. They also blame Sterling for not providing an adequate review. Jim Sterling, possibly recognizing an opportunity to draw in new viewers as well as to archive the video, re-uploaded the Ramin Brothers' re-upload, but instead replaced the original audio with unscripted reactions to the text. Here, he retorts that the Squirty Plays series isn't a review series, but rather about first impressions, though he dismisses most other points as the actions of a crazy developer.
I'm Jim fucking Sterling and I deliver accurate reviews. Not a review!
Is that where that comes from?
Work, and you
I don't remember if this is the origin of that.
Useless shit reviews and
In a fit of recursion that would make Christopher Nolan blush, the Ramin brothers uploaded a response to Sterling's response, though this time there was no video.
Thanks to Tier 1
Instead,
Bryce.
they only used the audio from Sterling's response and overlaid white text on a black background, again riddled with poor grammar. In this slideshow of text, they claim that, by purchasing pre-made assets, they are assisting with the production of further games and, thus, the cycle of game development. This misunderstanding of economics is forgivable, but their other claim is much bolder. In a strange confusion of fair use law, they ask, how is it okay to commit 60 frames of copyright infringement a second for 40 minutes and then get paid for it, referring to the use of game footage? They then accused Jim Sterling of contributing to the practice of, quote, unfair reviews, and thus affecting the livelihood of many people with no risk or cost to yourself. This video was followed with something all YouTube content creators dread, a takedown notice.
Yeah,
Plays
I remember that.
Brothers. Takedown requests on YouTube are almost unanimously respected by the administration, and anybody can issue a takedown request on any video for any reason. When a takedown goes into effect, the video is removed from viewing by the general audience for 4 weeks, with the onus on the requester to prove that some element of the video is indeed illegal. Often, certain companies with a vested interest in keeping a certain video offline will issue a takedown request that they can't follow up to reduce viewership of it and to punish the content creator by cutting into their revenue.
This is really like a
Homicide,
not
however,
nostalgic,
backed up its
but
takedown request to the
a trip
media,
down memory
albeit
lane.
with more poor grammar, stating that, quote, there are countless negative review videos posted, including multiple Sterling videos, and only one in particular with a DMCA filed on it. The reason is we have a legitimate claim, we can prove a violation of our copyright, fair use is not blanket immunity, and damages. They went on to say that, we believe the unbiased perspective of a court will agree there has been a violation of our copyright, and for this reason we will be pursuing an attorney and proceeding with our complaint. Despite these confident claims, it seems that no further action was taken, and the video returned to Sterling's channel 4 weeks later.
4 weeks?
This scenario may sound familiar to some gamers.
What?
This is because something extremely similar happened almost exactly a year ago to another content creator, who goes by Total Biscuit, when he created a review for the now infamous indie game Day 1 Gary's Incident. Jim Sterling, however, was in a slightly different position. Rather than receiving advertising revenue on any of his videos, he receives all of his money from a site named Patreon, where people may donate money to content creators on a monthly basis to support them.
Damn.
This means, beyond the need to continue supplying content to viewers, there is no direct financial
Rest in
need to keep
peace.
his videos online, and, in fact, it's likely that the controversy was generating further income for him. So, rather than fighting the takedown,
I don't have any
video,
like
he
competitive
began
decks
making
anymore,
further
Carpy.
videos, not
It
only
takes
on the
so
general
long to
topic
grind the
of
cards, and I haven't
media
put the
silencing
time in
indie developers,
recently.
but about the specific business practices of the Ramin brothers themselves, all while the
But yeah, I'd
original
love to.
Squirty
I
Plays
still love
video
the
sat
game,
with
still love
takedown
watching the
message
tournaments.
plastered on it. He quickly outed them as not imminent uprising, but instead the Digital Homicide Development Studio, accused them of asset flipping rather than true game development, then used that as a springboard to talk about the practice in general. In a surprising move, Robert Ramin decided that the actions taken by Digital Homicide Studios was not enough, and he challenged Jim Sterling to what he called a free-form debate to set the record straight once and for all.
Whoa!
In early July of 2015, this meeting indeed did occur over Skype and was recorded.
I don't remember this at all. Wait, what?
The perplexing discussion lasted almost an hour and 40 minutes, with no mediator.
Yeah, it's a great
It
video,
was
Eddie.
in this recording that the audience to this 8-month argument got to hear the
Thanks to
voice
Prime
of Robert
Evergreen.
Ramin for the first time. Here, he claims to be a 35-year-old man with 3 children, and that Digital Homicide has proven to be a successful business venture.
I was expecting to not hear the voice of an adult, so this makes me feel a little bit better about things.
Oh yeah,
And-
I have 3 kids. I'm 35. I'm definitely an adult.
The discussion in its entirety is a surreal
Thanks,
experience.
Resub Rex.
It begins somewhat cordially, where both parties acknowledge that they are participating in a one-sided conversation and are reluctantly thankful that they can now speak to one another. At about 2.5 minutes, however, things start to take a strange turn, and Robert Ramin's true intentions begin to manifest. He begins talking over Jim Sterling, disallowing him from responding to the accusations leveled at him. Ramin's voice also begins to crack in what sounds like restrained anger.
Let's talk specifically about your nonsense. Just go ahead and start all the way back at the beginning and go ahead and ramble off all your accusations and stuff.
He tells Sterling to point out problems with Digital Homicide, and Ramin will pick them apart one by one.
The games fucking suck. That's like the biggest
He
problem.
turns the conversation in an attempt to
It's
attack
literally
Sterling's
buying
personal
assets and
credentials
slapping 'em
and deflect
randomly.
Sterling's arguments into further
It's
attacks
indefensible.
throughout the conversation.
Which is why
It's
I then
your
fired
job.
back and did the same. I
It
responded
is your
in kind.
job. You telling me that when you were playing that game, you couldn't see the ammo counter 2 inches below the crosshair? I mean,
Broken
come
ammo
on.
count.
If you're gonna, we're going right back to what we were saying about you saying I'm an incompetent developer. As a game reviewer, you should be a very quality game player.
Ramin
Well, that's the way he's way off. I don't think any game reviewers are good at
aggressively
games.
and sometimes ad hominem attacking Sterling more and more.
The sheer geographical chaos that was your menu
That's
system.
what just goes to show why you're a bad person, man. You
A
don't.
bad person?
Yes, you're terrible. You are terrible.
What becomes abundantly clear midway through the conversation is Robert Ramin's stance on reviewers.
Thanks,
He
Resub
seems
League.
to believe that reviewers have a personal responsibility to the developers, and that negative issues should be taken to forums rather than reviews.
You have no financial investment in what you do, yet you affect tons of developers' lives.
Thanks, Resub Kaze.
Financially affect them. That is why one day you're gonna have enough subscribers. You're gonna make enough money on your Patreon thing, and somebody's gonna get tired of your shit and they're gonna sue you. So I'm not saying we are. I'm saying somebody's gonna have the money to do it, and they're gonna win.
And they did it!
Oh, is that what we've devolved into, is it?
Exactly.
This last point is a sore subject for many gamers around Jim Sterling's age due to the game market crash of 1983. Side note, the game market crash of 1983
Wait, why is this a sore spot?
$3.2 billion to only $100 million in 2 years, which is only 3.1% of where it once was. It is largely blamed on the oversaturation of the market with games and a lack of reliable reviews for gamers to determine the quality of products. Only the market success of the Nintendo Entertainment System was able to bring the industry back. It's also clear from the interview that Sterling's coverage did not positively impact sales, and Ramin makes a point to mention it. Throughout the
Yeah, but it
video,
could
Ramin
have if you had a
also
good
claimed
game
that
and it was a
Sterling
good review.
leveling his community directly at Digital Homicide Studios as a harassment weapon. Jim Sterling maintained a composed attitude through the review and even allowed himself a laugh at some of Ramin's statements. After this outburst, Digital Homicide went silent, and for 8 months they continued
Thanks to the
to
Prime
release
Lizard.
asset-flipped
I also
games
played
on
this
Steam
one as
Greenlight
well.
through dummy publishers.
Played pretty much every
Occasionally
Digital
getting a
Homicide
spotlight on
stinker.
YouTube channels as examples of terrible games. As of today, Digital Homicide has claimed credit for each of them. But after these 8 months, something happened that is difficult to believe and has made the Ramin brothers synonymous with delusion to odd onlookers. On March 16, 2016, Digital Homicide Studios formally sued Jim Sterling through the Arizona District Court for over $10 million.
Yeah,
accusing him
fuck
of
yeah.
assault, libel, and slander. Without a hint of irony, they claimed in a now-deleted post that, quote, "We find the usage of the terms worst game of 2014 contender and absolute failure to describe the entirety of our product while not actually evaluating it in its entirety unfair and unreasonable use of our copyright material." Among the libel accusations, they defend their use of dummy publishers on Steam Greenlight by likening them to pseudonyms, referencing Jim Sterling as a specific example. They also, oddly, cite Sterling's usage of the phrase "the Ramin brothers" as an attack. They make the bewildering claim that Sterling is attempting to liken them to mafiosos in an attempt to diminish their brand.
Yes,
On top of
that's
the
the
$10
one.
million,
That's what he was.
they're
Yes,
also
that's
demanding
probably
that
what it
apology
was.
segments be inserted into each of Jim's videos and on the front of his YouTube page for the next 5 years. Both sides began preparing for legal conflict. Sterling became much quieter about Digital Homicide Studios, while the Ramin brothers attempted to drum up support for their cause by speaking with publications, a somewhat questionable legal tactic. Soon after, Sterling moved for the case to be dismissed, and the court granted it. Though today it seems that the Ramin brothers have an opportunity to still take this case to court, it's
Thanks,
uncertain
Resub
if they
AJ.
have the funds to do so. They've set up a GoFundMe page, a place where people can donate to a particular cause or person, but have only managed to raise $425.
But it'll get- I'm
to
sure it'll
raise
get there.
presumably other people's money for legal costs. As it stands, it seems that the dust is beginning to settle. As for the future of Digital Homicide Studios, it's difficult to say. Now that they have so many assets bought, it would be easy to continue churning out cheap games, but with their name tarnished by this out-of-control Streisand effect, it may not even be worth the effort. For now, they seem to be in limbo, and there are many people who hope that that is where they will stay.
If I remember correctly, and I'm going off book here because it's been a while. If I remember correctly, Digital Homicide got banned from ever making games again. Like, it extended beyond Digital Homicide. Those two were not allowed to develop games again. I could be wrong because it's been a while, but I do remember Digital Homicide got fucked. And it extended beyond Digital Homicide because they used so many other, like, puppet companies that they just, like, a blanket, Steam made it so they could never publish. I could be wrong. I'm going off memory. Should we do the finale? Because might as well. I don't know how much there is left, but whatever.
On August 8th, 2016, I uploaded my first video on Digital Homicide Studios, an independent game developer who had become known for their dubious business practices. They first entered a wider public consciousness after game critic and video producer Jim Sterling exposed their pattern of buying pre-made assets and using basic Unity code to churn out games, a process Jim Sterling named asset flipping. Despite their litany of poor games and re-releases, which consisted largely of existing games with slightly altered visuals, they were able to avoid Steam's quality control by hiding behind multiple different company names.
Thanks to resub, Jordy. It really is crazy that people buy this shit.
The negative exposure Jim Sterling
to be fair, I mean, I was
them,
one of the people
two
buying these things, but it was
behind
only
Digital
to
Homicide
shit on it.
Studios, James and Robert Romine began openly attacking Sterling through videos, which he invited.
So there, it goes on and on like this. So they do the whole thing. There we are.
This eventually culminated in a $10,761,000 lawsuit, which was faltering at the time my video was released. I expressed a hope that this would lead to an end of the Romine brothers' bizarre behavior, but instead, it only intensified. For some time, James and Robert Romine had been embattled not only with Jim Sterling, but with negative commenters and Steam forum posters, especially after Digital Homicide Studios had been featured by Jim. They would typically either respond vitriolically or, more commonly, by deleting or locking the thread in question. In response, a Steam group was created called Digital Homicides, Poop Games, which dedicated themselves to identifying poor games.
Cool name!
Their description reads in part, quote, "Have you ever been banned or censored by a homicidal developer?
Digital Homicide
Are you
Poop
tired of a
Games,
game
one of
that
my favorite
isn't
Steam
worth its
groups.
Assets? If so, Digital Homicides is the group for you. Digital
Thanks to
Homicides is a
Brandon and
dedicated
Nick.
consumer advocacy group and censorship safe haven." Unquote. Beyond this group, online gaming publications and YouTubers had begun covering the actions of Digital Homicide Studios. By this point, Digital Homicide had been experiencing backlash for well over a year. Fed up with the prevalence of detractors and emboldened by his
Yes! I forgot about this.
James Romine filed a new lawsuit against 100 individual Steam users on September 12th, 2016, for a total of approximately $18 million. This new lawsuit began even before the one against Jim Sterling had concluded, and it also lacked any sort of...
Lawyers are scummy, man. They'll
James
just
had
take that
scoured
money
the
and just
internet
convince
for
you that
writings
it'll
made
work.
by
It's
these
great.
users, pulling from Steam forums,
I don't mind if they
Reddit
take money from
threads,
someone
and
like
Tumblr
this.
posts, compiling them into a single lengthy document to present before the court, accusing them of numerous slights such as stalking and harassment. The document spanned 123 pages. James requested that the court subpoena Valve for the personal information of these users. The presiding judge conceded this to James and submitted the subpoena, but Valve did not take to this kindly.
Thanks, resub,
Rather than
Aritis.
acquiescing, Valve contested the order, which would require further action from James. But Valve's response would go beyond the court. They
Congratulations,
also removed
Sniper.
all of Digital Homicide's games from their storefront less than a week after the subpoena, announcing unequivocally in a statement to TechRaptor that this was in response to the lawsuit against their customers on Steam. They even went so far as to announce this in the recent news section of some of
This is
Digital
tier
Homicide's
1
games for those who owned them. Mysteriously, around this
Australium?
time, those people who had bought Digital
tier 1?
Homicide's games also found that the entire Digital Homicide catalog had been added to their Steam games library. After this, James requested a dismissal of his suit against the 100 Steam users in an effort to recover his court fees, which was inevitably granted. TechRaptor requested a few words from James
Coward.
Romine, and what they
Fight
received
it.
was
You
perhaps
should have kept
more than
going.
they were expecting. James's replies seemed to lack any comprehension of the criticism
Thanks for
leveled
Prime,
against
Elma.
him and were written in somewhat questionable English. He stated that, quote, "It is important thing to note, Digital Homicide didn't file a dismissal or a case. The company had pretty much nothing to do with the case other than some evidence, which was why we were surprised by the result," unquote. This statement is technically correct, as James was suing as an individual and not as the company Digital Homicide Studios. He also suggested himself as a martyr, saying that, "We may have been painted in a negative customer light by gaming media. Truthfully, we've been fighting for lower prices and a more open market, which to me is the most important."
Oh, he was a hero all along,
He also attacked
James!
Valve for their lack of moderation, likening the situation to, quote, "a mall charging you rent for a shop and mall security staying at the donut shop all day while you get mobbed and looted." Against other developers leaving critical reviews, he stated, quote, "This would be like the next shop over in the mall coming next door and posting signs on my business with false information on them. How is that logically allowable?"
What are you
Perhaps
fucking...
of greater interest was his statement about the
What are you
fate of his
going on
company.
about?
Quote, "As far as Digital Homicide, it's destroyed.
Woo!
It's been stomped into the ground from 1,000 directions and use is discontinued. I'm going back into the workforce and watching what's really going on." Of his reaction to negative comments, he said, "We weren't some evil censoring dudes. If someone didn't like the game, they could leave a bad review and refund. No hard feelings here at all. The real problem was recurring returning attackers for, in some cases, 20 months.
What is this statement? I was even rebuilding Forsaken and the single player was about a third finished. So you don't see the problem with the fact that you sold a game that was only a third finished? What do you mean? Like, even in your own fucking, like, martyr statement, you, like, openly state that your games were just genuinely not done.
Unquote. But even as Digital Homicide Studios was dissolved and the subpoena was dropped, James Remine would redouble his efforts into his last remaining lawsuit.
I really do wonder what they're up to.
Despite these setbacks, the suit against Jim Sterling was still trundling on.
Thanks to Prime.
Of note was an egregious
Grade.
mathematical error where James incorrectly added his numbers so that his written total was $800,000 less than the actual sum. When presented to a judge, the case was found to be of woefully inadequate construction, but instead of dismissing it entirely, the judge granted James Remine the opportunity to amend the wording so that it would align with legal standards. Taking some of the recommendations of the judge, James indeed changed certain elements of the document.
Nice, good work,
but he
James.
also added one change of his own. Instead of $10.5 million, he was now asking for $12,550,000.
My
But his
man,
edits were
going
not enough.
in.
The lawsuit was partially dismissed again on January 13th of 2017 for one reason in particular. James Remine was suing as an individual for damages to a company. This left James with two options. He could either sue as Digital Homicide Studios or amend the lawsuit to show the damages to his person rather than the company. The former option, however, came with an important caveat. A company must be represented in court by a state-approved lawyer, but for reasons then unknown, James would not
TCG
sue
player.
as Digital Homicide Studios, and so he set about amending the lawsuit a second time. He returned soon after with the documents, but if Jim Sterling is to be believed, this amended writing was even more nonsensical than the first two iterations.
But my lawyer informed me that the level of distress referenced is on par with stealing somebody's child and pretending the child had been killed. That's the level.
What's more, the dollar amount being demanded
James!
from 12.5
Big
million
man!
to 15,326,000. Beyond the money, numerous
Fuck
other things had
yeah!
been added
He's
during the
going in.
lifetime of the suit, including poorly founded allegations of civil conspiracy. After this third document was submitted, James Remine was finally forced to speak to
Yeah, of
Jim
course I can,
Sterling's
Whiskey,
lawyer.
but,
What exactly
probably
transpired
won't,
is
maybe.
uncertain, but whatever was said to James, it finally convinced him to drop the lawsuit once and for all, but not before James would attempt to commit fraud by amending an agreement without alerting Jim Sterling. This attempt was caught before it was submitted. Jim declined to countersue, and the case was dismissed with prejudice so that it could
Oh, he
not be reinitiated later.
should have
With this,
absolutely
the game development
countersued.
of Digital Homicide
Oh, that would've been
Studios
so
had come
poetic.
to a final halt, and James
Just fucking
Remine's
crowdfund
game
the
industry
legal
efforts
fees.
were squelched. But while James was busy with the lawsuit, his brother had been at work. In November of 2016, while the lawsuit against Jim Sterling was receiving its first rewrite, a few particular changes had been made to their website, digitalhomicide.ninja, and were spotted quickly. Video taken of the site by YouTube user Crestfallen Philosopher shows the changes as of November 5th, 2016. The opening page had transformed into large advertisements for giveaways on Steam and itch.io, as well as games for sale on G2A.com.
But what does it all
Side note,
mean?
G2A.com is a digital game reseller that has been criticized for its arguably unethical business practices. Thieves will often use
Does it
stolen
still
credit
exist?
cards to buy games and list them on G2A before the card's original owner recognizes the theft and reverses the transaction. People will also buy keys
It still
cheaply
exists?
from poorer regions, then sell them for more on G2A.
I remember everyone fucking
Scrolling
hated
down the
this
page,
website.
This person
Holy
discovered
shit,
the name
I had
for
no
an
idea.
apparently new company, Loot Toot Games. The links provided here directed people to this new company's Facebook page, offering free game giveaways and sharing gameplay footage. On this page's sidebar, a large number of Digital Homicide's games were listed, offering free Steam keys for them. To go along with these web pages, a YouTube channel was created where dozens of game trailers were uploaded, accompanied by links to G2A.com. There was also gameplay from Digital Homicide games and videos labeled Loot Toot Quick Plays, where a small amount of original gameplay footage was featured for games being advertised. In one instance, for a video of the game Skydrift, the player seems to give up partway through the race, purposefully crashing into walls in a bout of frustration.
Okay. Pretty cool video, though.
In February, around the time the lawsuit against Jim Sterling was ending, Loot Toot would also create a Twitter account, which somehow managed to quickly acquire over 100,000 followers.
What?
This Twitter account began to post links to the trailers on their YouTube channel, games on G2A.com and Kingwin.net, and the giveaways on the Digital Homicide
They bought the
website.
followers,
At the
yeah,
same
botted.
time, the Digital Homicide Twitter account also began mass posting these links. During this time, there was a drought of YouTube content until February 11th, when a short video was posted of a clip from Predator 2, apparently in support of Digital Homicide Studios.
You see, there's no stopping what can't be stopped. No killing what can't be killed.
On April 1st,
Gosh, so
the
they
Facebook
started
account
memeing?
began to post
Nice.
links to loottoot.net
That's the way to do it.
instead of digitalhomicide.ninja. Soon after, the LootToot Twitter began to do so as well, and the Digital Homicide URL was changed to redirect to loottoot.net. It was also at this time that the YouTube channel was purged of all of its game trailers, dropping the total views on their videos by almost 600,000. But it wasn't until a month later that some clarifying statements about the lawsuit and LootToot games were published.
Not in my crapper.
On May 7th, 2017,
Cool
Games
game.
attempted
Fuck
to update the
yeah.
Steam page for their game Not In My Crapper under the name Loot Toot Gameworks, but after a few reports to Valve, it was swiftly removed again. This event was covered by some of the YouTubers tracking Digital Homicide, and there was a stir over the possibility that the Remind brothers were going active again. More onlookers were made aware of the connection between Digital Homicide and Loot Toot Games, and they began to spread this awareness. Again, interest grew. Though this time it was far smaller, it was enough to rile some to action. On May 20th, 2 people left 1-star reviews for Loot Toot Games on Facebook. While most other negative reviews had gone without retort so far, these 2 triggered a response.
Uh-oh.
The first review partially reads, "Guys, seriously, can you stop with this nonsense? Yes, people have managed to do this before and will manage to continue to asset flip and get away with it, but once you've been caught doing it, there's no way you'll get away with it." Loot Toot attempted to brush this off by replying, "No idea what you're referring to." However,
Couldn't
that
even use
same
the right
day,
"your"
another
in your
person
fucking
left a
official
review
fucking
warning
statement?
people of the
Jesus
previous
Christ.
practices of Digital Homicide Studios, and this elicited a much stronger response. Over a few longer replies, details about Digital Homicide, Loot Toot Games, and the court cases were revealed. Loot Toot Games wasn't created or managed by James, but rather by Robert Remine alone. About Digital
Oh.
Homicide, he claims that, financially speaking, he lost, quote, "more than you'll make in your lifetime," before he emphatically defended the practices of his
Wait,
now.
I want to read this. No, you just say this is another front for digital homicide, like someone's discovered some amazing secret. When digital homicide.ninja redirects to loottoot.net, so there's never been any mystery. Why did you put it? Why the fuck would you separate these sentences? It reads like shit. Then there's the whole thing about digital homicide being banned from Steam, so you making games isn't an option, like I'd want to after losing more than you'll make in your lifetime. That pretty much sums up whatever video you watched is full of complete horse shit, which isn't surprising. On a side note, what is it about you guys that you surf for negative shit to watch and then go vomit on someone who doesn't know you? Loot Toot is me, Robert. Ah, it was I, Robert, the whole time behind the mask. Yes, of course. It's not some big evil anonymous corporation. When you stop by and vomit, you are doing it to a person, and as much as you people say how awful I am, I wouldn't do something as lame as that.
Defunct game studio. He also revealed more about the lawsuits that James had attempted to perform.
It's not out
He
yet,
said,
feedback.
Quote, "Did you know the case wasn't thrown out? It was voluntarily dismissed by my brother because attorneys threatened to involve me in the case, and I told him, even though I agreed with him, I couldn't put my family through that financial stress, so he dropped the case."
Jesus,
If
he's
you
just
want to be
spilling
angry at
everything.
someone for fleecing people of their hard-earned cash, talk to the used car salesman that runs Steam. Also, it is too late. I reinvested my earnings, so I literally lost around $500,000 in 2+ solid years of my life. when
No
my
fucking
income
way you ever
from
made that
Steam,
from
so
those
it isn't an
shit-ass
option
games.
anymore, which is why you see me handing out free keys trying to generate some ad revenue to supplement my now defunct income. 5 months later,
0%
the YouTube,
chance he
Twitter,
made
and
$500,000
Facebook
in the
accounts are
entirety of the
still
2
posting
years
an
they
endless
pumped
stream
that
of
shit.
links, while the viewership on the YouTube page has stagnated to hundreds instead of thousands of views per month. Perplexingly, the Loot Toot Twitter page has over 200,000 followers, as does Digital Homicide, yet their posts rarely receive more than 1 like or retweet, suggesting the use of false accounts to bloat their follower counts. The Facebook page is similar, but to a less extreme degree, with approximately 30,000 likes and follows, with some posts clearly being promoted, while others remain mostly barren. With attention on them waning and their finances decimated, it seems that the Remind brothers are again falling into obscurity, and hopefully, this time, that is where they will stay.